Ladies, gentlemen, and haradrim of all ages, today it's time to talk about something a little bit different because I see a lot of the same complaints or comments every single season in Diablo 4, and I want to just sort of address a load of these together under a simple theme, which is how to make every single season of Diablo 4 better for yourself. Some things I know a lot of people aren't or haven't done that will simply make your experience smoother and more enjoyable in Season 7, and hopefully even beyond that as well, aside from any major changes that happen to be made to any of these things in the future, of course. First things first, then, from the very start, there is a sort of newer one here, but do the Vessel of Hated campaign on normal difficulty tier. If you just want to make it to endgame in Season 7, and likely moving forwards too, you'll want to just do specifically the expansion campaign on normal difficulty to get most of the way to level 60 in just a few hours. The difference between experience, doing the campaign on normal, and even on penitent is minuscule, because the majority of the experience reward comes from quest completion hand-ins, which do not scale with your difficulty tier. The amount that you are slowed down by doing a higher difficulty tier and doing the monsters, or even bosses in the improved difficulty too, makes it just not worth it at all for the monster killing XP that you get. If you're caring about efficiency, you want to do it on the lowest difficulty possible. The game is more fulfilling to play in higher difficulties, of course, and prior to the expansion, the base game campaign was too long to be worth not skipping for speed leveling, and everything else scaled with difficulty well enough that it was worth pushing higher tiers as soon as possible. But from this point, moving forward in Diablo 4, the Vessel of Hated campaign on normal difficulty is an extremely quick and simple way to get the most of the way to max level, and you'll want to take advantage of that pretty much every season, and I would assume when the next expansion happens, it'll probably just change to being that campaign moving forward too. And if you didn't do this in Season 6, you definitely want to try it out in Season 7. After that, a sort of transitionary tip between early game and end game for the game: play multiple builds. Yes, it can feel inefficient at first, and for the most part, most players go into the season with a build in mind that they want to play, and that's why they choose the class they do, and they try to do it from level 1 all the way to max level, all the way deep into endgame, and then they stop. This, in 9 out of 10 cases, is not really an effective way to spend your time, however, if your goal is to have that build be as strong and enjoyable to play as possible, because the vast majority of the time, the build that is the best at farming is not the one that's the best at something like pit pushing. The builds that are really good in Torment 4 aren't necessarily the ones that are better earlier than them, or it's maybe just not the one that you find to be the most enjoyable. So my main point here is I want you to be a bit more open to the idea of using a build around the Torment 1 to Torment 3 stage of the game progression that is built for speed, and using that with the purpose of farming the build that you want to be in for the rest of the season. An example for this is something like a Whirlwind Barbarian. It's really slow to start with. It really comes to its own when you get around Torment and you start getting the right gear around it, but it's really rough to use from the start, and a lot of people try to start with Whirlwind Barbarian and then have some problems. Another example is something like Necromancer with Bone Spirit, and if you try to do that before you have the gear to make it work, it just will not feel good in the slightest. So instead, what you need to use is choose a completely different build that is more efficient for farming and better at the earlier game section, and you can use this to get the gear that you need to make those builds happen. It may sound like a simple tip on the surface, but it's one I know a lot of people would benefit from actually taking to heart. Past that, a bit further on into the journey, this is a general mindset that I really want to hammer home, which is get used to trading as a concept. Diablo.trade as a website is a very well-reputed trading area. It's not run by the dev team, it's not affiliated with Blizzard, but they are run by some high-standing community members, and generally this is just a very good tool to connect Diablo players with each other. But you can accomplish the same thing just purely in-game with like the trade channel. It just takes a fair bit more effort to do so. The idea, though, of this is to just sort of play the start of your season with trading in your mind, in the back of your head. Make a point of saving any items that you could have value for other players, even if it's not something that you would want to use yourself. And if you get into trading early enough in a season, then get a couple of lucky drops, you can make a lot of gold very early and even ride the wave to get a bigger pile of gold to then spend through trading further to make yourself and your ideal build stronger faster. A lot of players aren't a fan of trading, and as someone who is sort of disgusted by the concept of human social interaction as a result of some 4-year-old event, I guess, that you probably haven't heard of, I completely understand not wanting to trade. Or maybe you take pride in the fact that everything you use is something that you found yourself in the game. But if you are not one of those people, I heavily recommend you consider treating trading as an actual part of the game at the start of the next season. If it isn't for you, then it isn't for you, but you may find a side of the game that you did not know existed that can significantly increase your potential power, or you may even just find joy in the act of trading itself. That said, this applies more so each season right now, as at the moment, especially in Season 6, even things like maximum rolled legendary aspects are so rare that you're unlikely to have everything you need for a build without trading to get some of it. So if you want to be strong, this is something to invest some effort into. Not to mention the new method for crafting mythic uniques this season and moving forwards too requires having a big pile of runes, and the best way for you to get that pile of runes is to trade for it. It's not by just hoping for the RNG drops of the exact runes you need, it's to interact with other players and try and get their runes that you want for something that they want in exchange. On a similar note to this, I know, social interaction and stuff like that, just use the party finder that they added to the game. This was put in with the Vessel of Hatred expansion, and it is still heavily underused so far. But put simply, you want to do as many grouped activities in the game as you can manage to do, as you can sort of make yourself do. Nearly everything is more efficient in a group, but this mostly applies to things like lair bosses, the ones that have limited summoning materials. If you are someone who has avoided doing boss rotations, you should really give them a go. This is when you group up with 4 players and you rotate one player each using their materials to summon the boss, so you essentially get 4 times the amount of boss summons for one player's amount of materials. You get 4 times the amount of drop for one amount of summon materials. So you're just losing out on more rolls at high value equipment and upgrades if you walk into a boss room by yourself and kill it solo the one time. This also applies to things like kurask undercity, at least for any tribute that doesn't say resolute in brackets, as that defines it as only giving the rewards to the person who uses the tribute. Things like the tribute of refinement, however, gives a load of masterworking materials at the end to every player that took part, and so that, along with the tribute that gives lair boss summon materials too as a second example, are both really efficient to run in a group rotation as well. Again, 4 times the amount of drops for the same amount of required materials or a tribute as if you were to just do it solo. It just takes a bit of organization and some social interaction. To help with that, aside from the party finder, you could also just look for a clan of like-minded players, as that can make it a bit simpler to get more consistent groups, and hey, maybe you could even make some friends in Diablo 4 too. Outside of this, I just wanted to shout out a couple of websites with fantastic tools that a lot of the blasters generally use to keep track of different things while they're playing the game. And these are things that I've shouted out in various videos since the launch of the game as they first sort of popped up in the community, but I feel it's been long enough that putting them together in a video like this gives you a nice condensed resource for them. First is helltides.com. This is a very simple website name, it's hard to forget, and it's a very easy and condensed place to keep track of the different timers in the game. This tells you the next world boss summon timing, its spawn time and location, it tells you the Helltide timers, which used to be more important than it is now, but they also tell you Legion event spawn timers as well. This website also has further things that you can do with it, like check player controlled and submitted pit leaderboards to keep up with what the top pit players are doing for each class if you're interested in that too. And then there was also Diablo4.life, which has some tools of its own, mostly just some good visual representations of a lot of different data that has been collected to tell you the best sources of farming different items. There is one tool specifically for opal gambling that tells you the best odds you have of getting a different aspect on each class dependent on slot. It can even tell you which class has the highest odds for gambling this aspect. For example, Necromancer has the least amount of class-specific legendary aspects that can be found in the leg armor slot, defensives, so if you want a generic defensive legendary aspect that can apply to all classes, your best odds of getting it are to opal gamble on legs for a Necromancer. There are a ton of specific interactions like that you can find through this system. They also have all the unique target farming methods in here too. Pick your class and your desired unique, it'll tell you not only the activity that may have enhanced drop chances, such as lair bosses or target farming for it, but it will also tell you which monster families have a heightened chance of dropping items for that slot, and which dungeons have those monsters in them too. This stuff may seem relatively tiny on the surface, but especially the opal gamble targeting can really add up over time to give you not only more rolls overall, but more efficient use of those rolls towards items, taking into account a bunch of factors that you could do with your own brain or with math if you kept track of it, but this tool exists already and does that for you. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a collection of a bunch of information that I think could help out a lot of players on a season-to-season basis moving forwards from this point, just sort of enhance and smooth out your journey through the game. Of course, if you play the game a ton, and especially if you watch a lot of our videos, you may already know this stuff, especially if you've been playing since launch, but I wanted to collect it all together, and for the people who tune in a bit less often, to help everyone just have a better time with the game. Like if you like the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.